We are recording on Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025 at 11:08 a.m. Eastern Time, and I've already forgot how to pronounce it. You just told me Justine Isernhinke, and it's a fucking awesome last name. I love it. But Dr. Malone put us in touch, and we're gonna kind of go into everything UAP, UFO, in whichever direction we want. But before that, please introduce yourself to everybody, and whatever you want them to know, and then we'll just jump on in.
Yeah, that's great. So, Justine Isernhinke, is originally South African. No, I don't know Elon. Everyone asks. I probably know the guys who beat him up. So, like, I don't know if that says anything.
I I grew up just outside of Atlanta. I was like suburban Atlanta. And 1 year in high school, we moved actually up to where I am now in Portland, Maine, for only like 6 months. And everyone used to ask because all the rappers from Atlanta, they asked me, they're like, "Are you friends with Usher?" And I'd be like, "There's like
Oh,
35 million people in Greater Atlanta." They're like, "Do you see Lil Jon and Ludacris?" And I'm like, "All the time, all the time." You know it. Stupid question. Yeah. I'm actually happy that I didn't ask you if you knew Elon. It's just probably a joke you said too many times. But what what got you into UFOs? I mean, other than for me, knowing I don't need a reason why. For me, I'm like it's just the coolest thing ever. But
Yeah.
and what is kind of your role in it? Not to immediately cut. I told you to introduce yourself and I immediately cut you off. But what's kind of your role in it?
Well, I mean, that's a lot of questions in one, but basically, my mom had a UFO experience, which I haven't really gone public on. She wrote a book about it, so at some point I want to publish it. Um, she's now passed, so unfortunately, the book is the record that we have. Um, but we kind of grew up with it as a subject in our family, and I really never it's your mom, right? Like, kind of take it seriously and you kind of think they're crazy because that's what you think are your parents, right? Like, it's just like the nature of, being a child. And then, and we'd watch the odd documentary. Now, South Africa didn't get, top quality TV for a long time. I mean, I think we only got TV in the year I was born. Um, and then, we had like one channel. It was highly propagandized, apartheid era TV. So, it really was probably in the 90s we started to get a lot of documentaries and so your knowledge expanded a bit. But really I never really kept tabs on the subject till there I was on Twitter and I kind of got on Twitter because of COVID and just disliking all the crap that was going around. And I kind of saw through it straight away. That's how I made friends with Robert, made friends with him really early on in the pandemic. um, and yeah, I just saw this thing about Grush. Well, first of all, actually, it was the family that had the aliens land in Vegas. Do you remember that? There was this family that had this recording that aliens had landed. It was April 2023. And they were a Latina family, Hispanic Latina, I don't know, a Latino, I don't know, I'm South African, I don't know what the phrases are. Um, but and they had this alien craft land behind their house, and these huge aliens appear, and it scared the shit out of them. And they had this video, and no one could see anything in this video, right? Cell phone footage at night is terrible. And it was just really weird because they about a week after the event happened, the young son, posted a video in for about 10 minutes and he said, he's going to tell the whole story of what happened. And he kind of gave a little bit of a summary of, the experience. And he said, well, I'm going to post a lot more. And he never posted again. That was it. He just went dead quiet. And I sent it to a friend of mine in South Africa who's interrogated. She was in the, defense forces. So she interrogated people and she said, that guy's telling the truth. That kid is 100% telling the truth. And I thought, that's really interesting. And then, of course, he goes quiet. Like, they don't make any money from it. Like, it was a huge hoopla and then it just died. And it sort of piques your interest because you're like, this is a bit like the Men in Black. Did they come visit them? Was told them to hush up. And anyway, that preceded Grush by about 3, 4 weeks. And then Grush came out on Ross Coulthard's News Nation. He had a huge interview that was groundbreaking. Like that was the dam that broke for me because Grush is a very credible witness, right? He's, incredibly transparent. If you haven't seen him speak, he doesn't really mince his words. He's not searching for, terminology that's vague, or he's very like upfront. And it was the most compelling thing I'd seen. And I suddenly went, oh my God, maybe aliens are like, maybe the government is doing something. And maybe Roswell is real. And maybe I've got to actually take a look at it. And yeah, that's kind of what sparked my interest. I wrote an article. I asked, I think I texted Robert, can I write a Substack article about aliens? Like, literally, that's what I asked him. And he went, yes, that'll be great.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, he didn't even like, and that's really what started it.
For me, I mean, amongst other reasons for why it's just so, I mean, I think at the very core is it's awe-inspiring. It's curiosity. It's the curiosity of when
Yeah,
you're a kid, right? The first time see whatever, it's curiosity. Um, for me, it's always made, and this isn't a defense of, but I mean, it's rationally made sense to me on why it would be covered up. And I've never really bought the explanation that the public would freak out. Maybe to a degree. To me, the thing that's always made the most sense is for what are the things most classified today? Is it a water bottle? Is it a shoe? It's weapons. Be
yeah,
it, you know, be it a missile, be it a bomb, be it a nanobot, be it a chemical. It's weapons. That we are the warring ape. We kill each other, and that's what power projection is. That's what aircraft carriers are. It's just what it is, and we don't have to get into right or wrong. It's an examination of what is. To me, it makes sense that at its core, what those are the most cutting edge weapons. And
yeah,
even you go, well, how's it a weapon? Just either they're getting here through our current understanding of physics, which is mind-boggling. It means that they're doing, either, maximum light speed or faster than light, or what they're using worm or whatever. No matter what it is, it's
yeah,
either an understanding of physics or an engine using a fuel, a level of efficiency that's beyond antimatter or beyond, fusion. And so what is that? Well, that's a weapon. That's something that's
yeah,
extremely far ahead from us. And to me, that's always made sense on why it's covered up. And it's doesn't mean it's good. You could argue it's national security. The other side goes, yeah, the history of mankind is also a small group of people always trying to run things to the detriment of others, right? It's always that you can't release the printing press, the people will know. But to me, that has always made the most sense on why it would be classified is because it's a weapon. At the most basic sense is it's a new sword, it's a new shield, it's a new caveman with a club, it's fire. And once you frame it in that, and it's assuming that this is the right way to frame it, but once you frame it in that sense, it absolutely makes sense that it'd all be covered up. You'd only really ever see tiny little things. Of
mm,
course, there would be Men in Black or something equivalent thereof because it would be trying to suppress this or intimidate. And then if it was real, there would be certain things that can't really be denied. You would just kind of hope the public forgets about, like the Phoenix Lights or the 1952 over DC or, the one in Iran where the guy had locked onto his missile or anything or the Tic Tac or anything in between. There would be certain things that you just couldn't explain away. And the best way to go about it would just be to not address it. So to me, it makes rational sense that they are real. And of course, it's being covered up by the most powerful forces on Earth. Why wouldn't it?
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
exactly. Well, and I think that's what I mean, I think from, well, a friend of mine on Twitter made this point a few times, and I thought this is really interesting. He basically said, the government is running two operations, right? The first is they're trying to get ahead on the reverse engineering
Hmm.
of off-world technology, right?
Hmm.
They want to be, the dominant. player in the world, right? How do you get that? Well, if something gives you an edge, I mean, if it's, what's the Kevlar gives you an edge, well, then, Kevlar is, the sort of the Bitcoin of the arms industry.
Sure.
Like that's what everyone wants, right? So on the one hand, that's what they're doing, and they're doing it because they know that, Russia, China, all the other big players in the world have also, found off-world technology and also trying to reverse engineer it. And so the first operation they're trying to do is just get ahead of that arms race that we don't know about, right? The layperson doesn't know about. The other operation they're running is to completely deceive us as a
Didn't I?
people, right? And so they're running this massive disinformation campaign, through ufology, really to put us all, basically, foment dissent, put in ideas, have us like chasing our asses to try and figure out what's going on. In the meantime, like no one's holding them to account. So, and I thought, that was a very good analysis because it kind of sets the scene for how to think about it, right? Like, what is the government's objective here? If we look back to, you know, I mean, Grush talks about Magenta in Italy in 1933 when Kraft landed. I don't know if your viewers heard his whole speech, but he's basically said that, in 1933, a craft landed, Mussolini and the Italians took possession of it. They
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do much with it. Um, and then at the end of the war, the Vatican ended up giving it to the US as part of, you
So,
know,
yeah.
some other, I don't know, probably part of Operation Paperclip and a bunch of other
Probably.
things that we didn't,
Probably.
other big deals that they were doing. Who knows? And so that was sort of the beginning. But and there's also this other, I mean, if you want to go down rabbit holes, I mean, there's a whole other conspiracy theory that, the Nazis really were dead keen to get a hold of, that tech, and that Mussolini's deal with the Nazis had a lot to do with reverse
Mm-hmm.
engineering this technology that they found. And that's what was the impetus behind the Americans getting involved, is they didn't want Germany to get ahead. And then, of course, the first thing they would do is take all the scientists that would have possibly worked on it. And there's a lot of breadcrumbs of paperclip throughout the UFO, story, right? There's a famous one. I don't know if you've ever followed Uri Geller.
Yeah.
Uri Geller was,
The
the
spoon
moon
bending
bending
guy.
guy. Yeah, yeah.
I emailed him a couple years ago. He actually responded to me. I wanted to get him on my show, and he politely declined. But it was so cool. To get a response from Yuri Geller, I was like,
I
"This
know
is
you want
so
to frame
cool.
that, right?
This is so cool." Yeah,
Yeah, he's it's not like it's hard to get a hold of his email address. It's just hard for him to actually say anything back to you. That's
yeah,
like nonsensical.
yeah.
Um, anyway, so he tells a story, right? So Uri Geller was part of Stargate. I don't know how many of your viewers know about that, but basically, the CIA ran.
I've had on the guy that ran Stargate, Dr.
Oh,
Dale
was that
Graff.
Joe McGonigal or?
Joe McGonigal is one of the guys. Dr. Dale Graff, Graff. He was the guy that ran it. There's Joe McGonigal was
Oh
one of the
wow,
remote viewers. Yeah, I've had him. He's even that was only a couple years ago. I don't think he's wanted to do it again. But it's just one of those things. I just did a show on it last week. It's about
really?
well, the very fact that program existed at all, and they threw more than one penny at it. To me, I'm like, that alone's crazy. But sorry, keep going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Uri Geller was part of Stargate for a while, right? Because they were very interested in his ability to bend spoons, and he definitely has some huge psionic ability there. And anyway, his story, he hung out with Werner von Braun, and he like took him into one of these underground military bases and showed him alien bodies. And it's like okay, I mean, Uri Geller says a lot of crazy things, but he's been very, that story's been very consistent. And I think Werner von Braun was the one that wrote about going to Mars and the character
It was
Elon.
Elon. His name was
Yeah.
Elon. Yeah.
So, there's all these weird, like, I don't know, these threads that keep weaving through everything. Um,
And
that
they're not from half naked crackheads on the street. Like the sources are, I mean, was it
really,
Eisenhower that or no, Truman that said UFOs, given that they exist, are not created by powers on Earth? It's like who's that? That's the president who dropped the atomic bomb. Like you know, like or Gerald Ford. Like I know UFOs exist. I've seen them. These are not random people.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, and you know, you look at your David Fravors, your
yeah,
Ryan Graves. I mean, these are like, you know, we how much money. I mean, first, you know, the selection process to choose these people is super hard, right? They
Mhm.
weed out the crazy guys. They weed out the guys that, you know, are doing DMT on the weekend. They are choosing, you know, people that can think in a split second, people that can assess a threat from, you know, a harmless item, right? And have to make those instantaneous decisions and have that kind of um, you know, brain to body
Flow
uh
state, intuition
yeah,
thing.
geez,
Yeah,
like next level, right?
yeah.
And I mean, how much better selection do you have? Like, you know, we talk about Darwinism, but like that's Darwinism, right? That's the best of the best. And if these guys are saying they see stuff, if they're saying that people that they work with, you know, on these battle cruisers and you know, in you know, in flight school and everything, they see stuff, right? And they can't tell anyone because you don't want to get thrown off, you know, you don't want to lose your job, you don't want to be you don't want to have a demerit, you don't want someone to put it on your record or take you off, you know, flying, right? Because for these guys, being up in that plane is everything.
Yeah.
And and so of course they're just gonna like not say anything, or they'll just brush it off, or they won't, you know, or if they report it and it goes nowhere, that'll be the end of it, right? So but they're not, you know, non-credible people. They're the complete opposite. And I think like that's what is driving a lot of what I think is going on now is we're seeing a mass reaction from, you know, people within, I don't know, I don't want to say the US government because I feel like government is very narrow. I think it's, you know, within like people that are both within and without the deep state, right? So people that are within the DoD, people that are in these defense contracting companies that know about stuff. Um,
The power elite,
yeah,
corporate,
yeah.
intel, what, yeah,
Yeah,
supranational.
but the guys that are in on it, right? Like I'm not talking about the Larry Finks of this world because you know he's just all about ESG and you know depopulation. But you know the you know that whole wormhole, right? But like you know the guys that are running these programs who don't want to get known, right?
Yeah.
That are just run the total shadow people that we never really hear of or see because that's where the real power resides. And you know I feel like they've you know and I'm very convinced that there's a few people within the UFO disclosure movement that are you know pawns in there
100%,
using dissent.
100%.
um they're definitely you know talking in people's ears about what can and can't be done. You know and everyone has speculation as to who it is, but I really don't know. I mean you know it's I feel like you know when you're saying something public you have to do it with an element of real knowledge, and I just don't. But I just that's seeing how the movement has morphed over the last even 2 years since Grush came out. There's a lot of like disinformation agents planted, and and I think that's hampering the movement, and I think it is dividing you know good people away from each other because everyone starts accusing someone else of being that agent. You know how it goes, right? It's just like it's the same thing what like you know what we had in the COVID movement. Because you know I was so close with Robert, I could see like there were literally people that were just out there to break it apart,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah. No, clear as day.
And you know once you injected money into the discussion, then you had people peeling off because oh we can make money on the movement. So then like you know we're here for medical integrity and personal physical liberty, and that'll just you know, no, 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 you know, buy our 5 pack of supplements and
I accept that just to be it sucks, but it's also something I just accept
yeah,
to be part of anything that is a threat to the balance of power or a challenge to the, monopolar power or it's not good and I wish it wasn't, but I just accept that it's there and it makes sense. If you have the power to keep UFOs secret, you probably also have the funds to run what
yeah,
is, what is that to them? A millionth of a percent of their budget to hire a couple dudes. I accept that, and I more than I guess I kind of look at it as like use it as a challenge, use it as a sparring partner. It
Yeah,
makes you fine hone your critical thinking. Like you don't know who is a disinformation agent. You don't know who willingly is and who is unwillingly, who thinks they have a scoop on something.
yeah,
Really, the only way to go about it is just to use your own brain, trust your gut, use your eyes and your ears, and re-examine things and go forward and try to use as much humility as you can, and that you're probably gonna be wrong and it's gonna feel bad to be wrong and all that, but to keep moving in that direction. And
yeah,
so even the people that say like a Fravor or a Graves, those guys are controlled opposition. Even if they are,
yeah.
it's still it's crazy enough that the government's then putting, let's just walk along this assumption and say that they are chosen to do this. Well, why is the government choosing to do that? Like that alone, I go, well, that's kind of interesting.
Well,
It's
I mean, but that exactly, exactly. And that does tie into, is the government really pushing a certain agenda in the disclosure movement, right? They're pushing a certain thing. So we're all, looking at the monkey over here when we should be looking at something else. So let me ask you, have you heard of Jason Sands?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Brace yourself. Have
Okay.
you've obviously, of James Fox.
Is he a director?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
did The Phenomenon, he did Moment of Contact.
Did he do didn't he do the one about the Phoenix Lights?
Yeah, that's in I think it's for The Phenomenon or
I think he had one
No.
called Out of the Blue or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's some other name, Know Everything or whatever. I don't know. It's got the
Yeah.
word, KNOW in it. Um, and anyway, so James Fox has been working on a documentary called The Program. And James has a huge following on, I want to say UFO Twitter. UFO X sounds weird. UFO Twitter. And he posted like one photo of, he said like, oh, we're filming, guys. It's coming, it's coming. And he posted a photo for like a split second, not realizing that on the clapboard, because they were filming, on the clapboard was written the name Jason Sands. And of course, in the UFO community online, you post something for 3 seconds, everyone's going to photograph that and everyone's going to start like going down rabbit holes, right? So that started. And then about a month later, Jason Sands gets on UFO space and basically tells his whole story, which is insane, right? And then what was interesting is that he then got kind of shunted aside by the normal guys that control the narrative, right? So and I'm not saying any, the reasoning behind it, I'll explain later, but like your Jeremy Corbell's, George Knapp, Ross Coulthard, Bryce Zabel, all these guys, Richard Dolan, all guys that are, your sources of good info when it comes to the UFO world. And he didn't, normally when we introduce to a UFO whistleblower, it comes through one of those filters, right? And well, it has in the last few years. So, for Jason just to come on a space, like a lot of people attacked him. A lot of people thought, oh, he's just full of shit. But I listened to his story and I was like, this is really intriguing. So I ended up getting a hold of him. And we met a few times, chatted, continuously over the last year and a bit. Um, and he's actually in the program that James Fox does. And the story he tells in the program is not the weirdest part of everything. But the story he tells is in the 90s, they were working on test range in Nellis um, test site. And they had gotten there early morning, driving through the desert. It was a cold morning. He was in the lead vehicle. And suddenly out of like basically the hills or the desert appears this guy in uniform and they're like, oh, what's happening? So Jason gets out of the vehicle, approaches the guy to see, what are you doing in the middle of nowhere? Jason notices the guy's got like a light blue skin tone, and Jason's immediate thought is this guy's got hypothermia because it's been out in the
Sure.
desert, like it's early morning, he must be freezing cold. Jason takes off his jacket to give to him, and this guy's in full military fatigues. And then Jason realizes this guy's eyes are a little like wider than ours and reach to look the end of his forehead, and that his features are not exactly human, but he's kind of human looking. And the communication is fully telepathic. And this guy, and then Jason sees behind this guy a craft that had landed. And this guy was asking Jason for help because he needs some parts for his I guess his craft. And Jason said, like, well, you can go to Area 51. And the moment he said that to I guess this alien, right? The guy went, "Oh hell no, I'm not going there." And then so, Jason said, "Well, I know a hardware store guy down in, what I mean? Like one of those benign types of conversation. I'm
Yeah.
paraphrasing. Like Jason was like, I don't know. I mean, like what else do I,
Go to Home
recommend?
Depot.
And then like that was the encounter. And then the guy just like apparently got off in his craft and flew off. And the funny thing was there were other people in that convoy, and they all, I think, barring two people, like no one really remembers. Like they were almost put in some kind of stasis. So they didn't actually know what happened. They didn't see what happened. And then the one or two guys, I think that did at least see the guy before they went into the status, they just, refused to come forward. Um, but tied into this is the interesting thing in the program, is that there's a video of that craft flying over the Nellis test range. If you go online, you'll find it, 1994. And that was like, Jason, and when Jason's explained the story, he really hasn't wavered in his details. I mean, I'm paraphrased a lot, because that's just how I am. But his story is fairly consistent. And it's fascinating. And then what's even more interesting is Jason ran security for the program, right? They call it the program, which is the reverse engineering program. And when you run security, what you do is you spend several weeks, um, basically going and, assessing the security of compounds
Yeah,
and where they
trying to
keep stuff.
break in. Yeah.
Yeah, but of course, 1990, the 1990s, I mean, it's not too much tech. So you're listening on phones, you're wading through the dumpster to see what papers they should have shredded, they haven't shredded. You're breaking and entering to see
Hmm.
how good's the codes. And then write a report up afterwards to basically say, this facility, gets a B minus or an A plus or whatever the case is. And it's on that he just, that's when he learned what the program really was about. And he's actually been, I mean, he testified fairly, he testified in a skiff, I believe, early 2020, I don't know, let's say 2022, 2023 or something. Like he's been part of the whistleblower group for a long time, but he is never mentioned by anyone. And it baffles me no end. And it's because I feel like he went kind of off script, and that because he disclosed openly to people, and he's, an incredible guy to speak to. I think that upset, the gatekeepers, right? And what I've come to realize is, all your journalists, all the guys that, are telling us, like, Jeremy Corbell keeps promising us whistleblowers. Yes, you are making things available and you are doing a lot for the movement, but you're also a gatekeeper, right? There's a
Mm.
double-edged sword in there that makes me cautious about, like we talked about, like how much is disinformation, how much is managed. Well, why is Jason Sands pretty much left in the dark? And I mean, the guy's 100% genuine. He showed me his speed dial list of like who's been in contact with him. He's got everyone on there, right? It's not like he's like it's just sort of Joe Blow off the street that's talking to him. I mean, the guys are talking to him, right? It's just they won't go public with it. And it's made me think very seriously about how the disinformation movement is running, because you would think someone like him, and I haven't even told you the crazier stuff, because like you should try and interview him, but the crazier stuff is just wild, and like we're not talking about it, like no one's talking about it. And I don't, this guy, has helped bring forward a lot of the whistleblowers we do know about. I mean, he knows David, he knows all those guys. Um, and yet, mainstream UFO speak is dead quiet about him. And it's just been an interesting observation. Like why? Like why this guy who's had this incredible experience, who's he's been in the department, worked for the Department of his Defense his entire career, high security clearance. And I will say the interesting thing is that after he came forward, he lost his job. He was working for a contractor in the DoD. He lost his job and his security clearance kind of went on hold, which it never is supposed to. Something that very similar happened to David Grush. And Jason's just never been able to get it reinstated. And, he was telling me yesterday, maybe he just does something else,
Hmm.
moves away from government related work. But yeah, so I just think, and I'm sure there's a lot of people like him. And I think the whistleblower process that we have is horrendous. Because it is being gate kept by people that, want to have more likes on their podcasts, want to bring viewers in, want to have an edge over the other guy, want to have the scoop, right? And then at the same time, the whistleblower is like, well, I've got to pay taxes. I've got to feed the dog. Kids have to go to school, right? And you're just fucking with my life because you have the story. And
Hmm.
I think that puts a lot of whistleblowers off. And I think the whole process, the UAP Defense Fund, I don't know if you heard about that. That's an organization that was set up, was supposed to be, helpful to whistleblowers, but I don't know. I don't know what they're doing that's useful right now because certainly it's not protecting whistleblowers. There's no physical protection that they're getting. Legal protection is really hard in this world of murkiness, right? Because it's not so much um like, oh, they get fired, so much as, oh, well, your security clearance went into some limbo state and now you can't get hired until, and no one can figure out how to get it out of that limbo state. It just kind of goes into, so it's just weird. The sort of the snide attacks are very underhanded that you can't really point at it and say that happened because I was a whistleblower. It's just, you know what I mean? They're very underhanded. And I feel like the problem is, when people who are sitting on information are going to look at that and go, well, why should I come forward? Right? Look, Jason was attacked on the community. I mean, he talks very kindly about everyone, but when he came out, people really went after him because he just didn't come through one of the approved gatekeepers. And so people are like, I don't know. It's just an interesting dynamic, and I feel like it pulls us away. Again, it pulls us away from the conversation of really, which is, we have, if there's if there's extraterrestrial life, or there's some other life form interacting with us, right? It changes our entire reality. That every human has a right to know that, right? I don't care if you're in Bangladesh or Johannesburg, you have a right to know that as much as anyone else, as much as the American citizen, right? No government should share that from the world. It's not your place to withhold the truth of reality. Um, and yet, like, that's the question everyone should be holding, governments accountable for. But instead, we're fighting over whistleblowers and Senate hearings and, what Lou said or what Lou didn't say or what Grush hasn't said. Or it's just like, and it just keeps everyone distracted. And, you lose the plot. And then, you have hearings where, like Lou showed photos that, were completely, not at all a UFO. And it's embarrassing and it humiliates the whole process and kind of sets everyone back. And whether he did it deliberately or not, it's a whole other question. I can't answer that. But it creates a lot of momentum in the wrong direction, right? Everyone becomes much more about people and not about really, which it is, what's the nature of reality.
On a on a human level, I can kind of see why whistleblowers wouldn't. You know,
Absolutely.
it's there's the argument that it's part of fundamental reality and no one has the right to hide that from you. And I agree. And I look at like a deeper reasoning would be there's to me at the center of it all is there seems to be some level of energy production. And at that very core, is energy production going to cure the world's problems? No, nothing's a silver bullet. But if you did have something that was, more, some alien energy density is to nuclear fuel, what nuclear fuel is to firewood. If it's that
Mm.
far, you can look at some huge kind of broad strokes and go desalinization of ocean water, greenhouses. You could feed and drink a lot of people in the world. And I can see where that would be a giant moral thing. It's not that it's necessarily you're working on some government program where they're torturing, people and there's a moral you go, I have to talk about this. But I can see where you might look at this and go, well, this could cure a lot of the problems in the world. You're always gonna have factions and religions and power and ego. I get all that. But there could be definitely a moral or ethical splinter to where if you know that's real and you know they've been researching it for decades, and maybe they've even begun to produce some watered down versions of it, I could definitely see where that's a burden on your soul. On the flip side, I can also see you rationalizing not disclosing it because it's not something that is so outright evil. Like, hey,
Mm.
we're skinning people alive, or you're like,
Yeah.
all right, I have to talk about this. And even if they kill me, I can't live with myself because it's kind of so abstract
Yeah.
and some hyper energy density and and then you go and, and it's a great job. And, what's really going to happen if I tweet about this versus I got 3 kids and, the wife is happy and I'm blessed to be alive. Yeah, I can see where you go, why am I saying anything? Like, it doesn't make it right or wrong. I just, on a human level, I get it. And then there's also the whole aspect of what's so interesting about this stuff is I think Bob Lazar, and whether or not he's telling the truth, who knows? But
Yeah.
but what's so interesting about it to me is it's not like other classifications of programs, nuclear
Mm.
weapons, stealth, space programs, to where you're doing this thing and then you're keeping it quiet.
Yeah.
There's something so, I've always thought about this. There's something so fascinating about the idea of reverse engineering. So you're trying to figure it out. You're lying to everyone outside that it's not happening. And then the people on the inside, and this is what Bob Lazar talks again,
Yeah.
whether or not it's real, I do think that even if he's lying, I do think that this general framework exists. You have people in the military who are like, all right, so we have this thing that is beyond, by virtue of the fact that we're reverse engineering it, that definitionally says we don't know how it works. So who's going to figure out how it works? Well, the smartest of the smart. Okay. Well, you also don't want them to figure it out for themselves because if this whole thing is about you want it as a source of power projection, you don't want the scientists to figure it out and then not tell you. So you'd have to divide them up into siloed groups to go, you are only doing propulsion, you are only doing shielding, you are only doing whatever navigation because you wouldn't want any one of them to figure it out because you don't know how it works. And if this is some, coup technology that you can just take over the world with, it's this weird balance of everyone outside of this program, this doesn't exist. We're not doing it. It's not even possible. On the inside of the program, we have all these guys that we're saying you're going to operate on this. If you tell
Mm.
anyone, we're going to kill you. But we also don't want you working together because we don't want you guys exchanging notes
Yeah.
with one another. But we also can't silo you too much because we know China's doing this too. And how much are they side? It does seem to just be in terms of just like as an idea, it is just like the most attractive story to me.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
Tom Clancy novel, regardless of the whole, yeah, it's the human right and blah 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 blah. As just a story, God, it still gets me every time. I'm like, oh, I just want it to be real. I just want it to be real. But and then there's
Well, I mean, so let's take what happened recently. So Space Force gets headquartered in Huntsville, Alabama. Guess what's in Huntsville, Alabama? Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin.
Oh, yeah, no, Alabama's a huge hub for like space technology, and
No,
people always
but
write
Huntsville,
Alabama off for.
Alabama is the
Yeah,
heart
no,
of
I
the
know.
defense contracting companies. And the one allegation that's been made continuously, right, since Grush came in is how is the government spending all this money, right, without any oversight? Well, very easy. You create
Proprietary
an unacknowledged, waived special access
space
program,
program.
right? And you're sending money to Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin, because it's waived and unacknowledged, means no one knows about it. No one can talk about it. Government's waived from government oversight, right? So immediately there, you've lost government oversight. And now it sits in a private
Private
company,
company. Yeah,
and you can't FOIA a private company,
yeah.
and you can't, point the finger to them for anything, right? They're not accountable by any social contract between the citizens and the elected officials, and they can just do whatever the hell they want. Now, the interesting thing, another interesting point when I dived into it that I really liked is why is it all coming up now, right? Like, why is this whole issue coming up? And part of the reason, I think there's a couple of reasons, but part of the reason I think is your tech companies don't have this tech, but our tech companies are the big players, right? They really are. I mean, Google, OpenAI, SpaceX, all of these high tech companies, and they're completely out of this loop because when that tech got divided back in 47 and, all the other crashes and, and according to Jake Barber, and if you followed him, these guys are aggressive about it. It's like for first come, first serve. Whoever gets to the site gets the craft, right? They'll shoot out at each other. It's not an easy extraction. That there's a competition between them, right, as to get the best tech. But it's certainly not happening at the Silicon Valley giants. And so one of the questions about the UAP DA, that the act that's going around now, right, that they want to get passed as part of the annual the annual National
National Defense Authorization Act.
Authorization Act, yes. Um, that, that's all part of trying to get some of that tech into the hands of the big silicon guys, Palantir, right? Peter Thiel, friend, who I believe is all over this. You talk about a rabbit hole, that guy is a rabbit hole,
Yeah.
right? He's got his fingers everywhere and not in a good way. Um, and and guys like him want this tech, right? And they're out of it. They're because they're not in Lockheed Martin. They're not where, you know what I mean? They haven't been part of the legacy program. So, I think there's a little bit of pressure that's happening to, let's just call it the program, from outsiders, right? That aren't don't have our interests at heart, right? They've only got, their
Yeah.
development,
Yeah.
their tech interests at heart. But I think that they want that. They want to get ahead of that. And like Elon, is the one that keeps saying, well, there's no aliens in this, but I'm like, you probably just aren't read in. And
Or he knows better.
well,
I mean, he knows that his plane's gonna crash and all his kids are gonna magically die. That's what I mean, know better. I mean,
yeah.
if you're in that milieu of power, you're probably not idealistic like me or you, where we're like, talk about it. You're probably in there. You're like, dude, they will kill you before you even hit tweet. Like,
No, no, no.
that's
They
what I
do.
mean. No better. He's probably
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. And I mean, but again, like if you look at it, like they, I mean, you can always create a conspiracy where there is none, right? But he had that split with Trump, and a lot of it was over the fact that Trump didn't want Elon's guy in on NASA, right? And because Elon wanted a particular guy, Isaacson or something, I can't remember the exact name. But he wanted him to run NASA, and that was the guy that was, going to be appointed. And at the last minute, Trump changed his mind, and that's sort of, I believe that's where the fallout began. Um, but you also have to wonder how much like Elon thought he was going to get access to stuff like this,
probably.
right?
Yeah.
And then probably found out the door was shut in his face because the legacy guys are going to be like, no, we don't want some upshot in here. We want to keep it where we have it because why should we share it, right? Why should we share the profits? Why should we share the tech? What's the benefit to us? I'm like, it's probably none. And I don't know how much, any president has control over this. I really don't think they do. I think it's so out of
Yeah.
the reporting structure. It's so siloed in its own
It's just like a
reporting.
runaway.
Yeah,
It's
help a bunch of people and
in
yeah,
biology they call it speciation. I have a biology degree, but like it's worthless.
yeah,
But like one of the things is like the Galapagos Islands, where it's like, all right, birds or ravens or finch might go there, and they start to deviate, and okay, but then over millennia, there's not that they're kind of similar. They're completely different animals, and
mhm,
they're adapt. Why wouldn't there be speciation within that? Why
yeah,
wouldn't it run away? And
exactly.
it's, I think that, yeah, you probably have him, because he threw, Elon threw however many, I think over 100 million at Trump's campaign, which I like Trump. So I'm not even saying in terms of most people hate him and that's fine. That's not even the point I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
You don't go behind every person with money donates to a politician to try to get fit. You don't go behind Trump. That's a 50-50 flip. If it doesn't work, everyone hates you. If it does work, everyone hates you, but at least you have an inside man. Like I'm just looking at this
Yeah, yeah,
remove all
yeah.
emotion just as like as a chess game. Yeah, you probably think that yeah, you'll get some contracts, you'll get some buddy buddy, some quid pro quo, but you probably want to be on the inside and for all he wins and Trump goes, dude, I'm not even read into this shit. Like what do you think? They'll kill me. Like, what are you doing? Or this whole thing is a show, but yeah,
Yeah.
no, to me, it makes sense that it's probably so far off the reservation that I mean, it's at a point where I feel like it's probably transcended these corporations. And I have no proof of this, and it's just wild speculation. But it kind of gets to a point where you almost start wondering, like, you're like, are these even separate entities? Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, DoD, Air Force, CIA, DARPA, BARDA. At what point is it like puddles of mercury that have just zoom
Mm,
come to get, you know what I mean? Like, and if we're talking
yeah,
about tech that can run the world, at a certain point, you're like, yeah, these are probably all just smoke and mirrors.
yeah.
And and I would imagine it also probably hampers the ability to ever truly reverse engineer it because it's so shielded. But yeah, why is it coming out now?
Mm.
It's
Something you don't know about me because Robert and I don't really talk about it too much, but my mom was an astrologer for 35 years.
okay.
She got a doctorate she got a PhD in paleontology, right? So the Jurassic Park stuff. And then tried to make a living as an academic in South Africa's universities in the 70s, which was not easy as a woman. It's really not easy. So and she ended up going to an astrology lecture and thought, wow, this shit's amazing. This is super interesting stuff. And this explains everything. And it's all maths and science and astronomy. And she kind of loved it, right? She fell in, she fell in love with the science part of it. Anyway, long story to say that basically Pluto entered into Aquarius about a couple of years ago. And then Neptune's now entered into Aries. And so we're entering like a phase, like they call it the Aquarian age, but ages are very different to, where the planet Pluto is. But the discussion, Aquarius is the sign that rules the sky, it rules space, it rules technology, it rules electricity, it's the planet of aliens, right? Alien tech, all of this stuff, right? And AI, I mean, all of it. It's Aquarius. So the moment Pluto I knew was entering into Aquarius, I think it was in 2023, and I said like, this is going to be what is going to be talked about for the next 20 years. As long as the planet Pluto is in the zodiac of Aquarius, that's all we're going to talk about. And I also thought like, well, this is a time to get into the subject because it's going to be in the headlines for the next 20 years, right? Whether we come to the truth or not, it's not going away as a subject. And I kind of approached it with Robert like in my head, I didn't tell this to him, but I thought, well, let me write articles in a way that explains it to someone who has no background. in the UFO space, right? That you just read stuff with, and I'm assuming zero, knowledge or who's who and what's what and what's going on. And because I feel like the responsibility on people like you and me is to bring this to a wider audience, because I don't believe people there will be an ontological shock. I think the world is past that. I think the new generation is far more, okay with
Yeah.
aliens ruling the world, right? Like they've no problem with that. Um, it's really, Gen X and the boomer generation that whether we have the greater resistance of talking about it as if it's a real subject. But, I believe it's something that needs to be discussed because number one, it's not going away. And number two, it is going to change how we view our reality. And we have to get comfortable that our reality, our understanding of reality changes, but not our reality as such, right? You still have to walk the dog, you still have to pay your bills. None of that changes. But, maybe your understanding and your sense of self in the world changes, and how that, aligns with your beliefs, your religion, all of that, people have to come to their own conclusions. But the more we face it, the quicker and the easier that process will be. The more we, ignore it and pretend it's not happening, I think the worse it will be should there be, disclosure in the form of, Trump walking out with an alien or a piece of spacecraft. Because that's the disclosure everyone wants. No one cares what Trump says, right? They want to see something. That's what the world wants. They want the evidence. And I think until such time as that happens, and I'm kind of optimistic it'll happen more than not. Um, our role as people that disseminate information is to get people comfortable with the subject and knowledgeable and question it and be critical and understand that it is the greatest secret the world's elites have kept from us, and that and no one has a right to hide reality behind the banner of national security. I think that's fundamentally wrong. I think no one wants to know how the spaceship works so much as just show me there's a
Yeah.
spaceship.
Yeah. Yeah. It's less about, I'm sure the science is fascinating, but it's also, yeah, the ultimate reality, the kind of the ontological base. And it's
Yeah,
yeah, I think part of me goes they're revealing it now because they're getting ready for some blue beam thing. That's one thought. Another thought is that it's getting harder and harder and harder to hide it. And
yeah,
we're kind of hitting a point where it's like leaks are happening faster, relatively. Even if we go, yeah, it was 5 years ago. Well, it used to be like 1947 and then like nothing, and then 20 years and then
yeah.
nothing, versus it seems like more and more you have people looking at videos going, that's not CGI, and they're analyzing it. So it could be like, all right, let's get ahead of this. It could also be that earthly affairs could force the hand of it. I mean, it might be that this kind of technology is the only way to prevent thermonuclear war, right? You have Reagan's SDI, and even that was like hopeful at best. You have bunkers, but even that was all pretty. I think Eisenhower said like we're going to go back to sticks and stones, and people are going to go insane at the implications of what's happening. It might be that, I don't know, shit pops off,
Hmm.
and there's 4,500 ICBMs coming in, and they're like, we have this, we have this, we have this. And then, somebody comes in that Trump's never seen. They're like, well, we also have this contingency plan. And it's like, it's like, if you press this button, those will all disappear. Okay, we want to do that because we don't want to get nuked, but there's going to be a really awkward press conference after this, and it might be that, and that might not be planned. That might be like a natural where eventually it's like, let's say I have a Kevlar vest, as you said earlier, but let's say no one knows Kevlar exists except for me and like two people.
Yeah.
Over a long enough period of time, there might, let's say I'm in like, I don't know, a SWAT team or police standoff or something on a long enough timeline with enough interactions, someone is going to say, fuck it, and they're going to shoot at me, and it's going to be really awkward when it doesn't kill me. That just might be something where it's like, if you flip a coin enough times, eventually it is going to land on its side. It
Yeah.
could be that. And, I don't know. Or maybe maybe you broach it and make it publicly available, let's just look at it cynically. Why would you do that? Well, because then you can drop the whole facade of this isn't real, and you can drop the whole facade of like siloing scientists,
Mm.
reverse engineering it. You might do that if you found out that China or Russia was getting close on theirs. So you might blow the whole lid and get rid of the whole secrecy shit and be like, all right, this is real. And,
Yeah,
we want the world's best scientists. And there's no longer secret, really. Harvard, Northrop Grumman, whatever, Georgia Tech, we want all of them. That's a way you could also expedite it to just drop the whole charade of it. It's not real. You'd be like, okay, it is real. And now we want to expedite it. I don't know. It does seem though, whatever the explanation is, Blue Beam or the World War III or whatever, it does seem that for whatever reasoning, it is the secrecy is kind of breaking apart.
yeah. Well, and I mean also, so like Africa has its own huge history of UFO interactions, right? Like there's some incredible stories. Obviously, about Ariel School, right? In 1994, the craft landed. About 100 students like interacted with the alien beings, and John Mack went down there and interviewed them. He was the guy that wrote this book about abductions. He was a Harvard professor that they tried to
Looking at what's the
discredit.
name? Sorry, what's the name of it again?
Ariel School, Ariel. And that was in 1994. And I actually went there about 2 years ago when I went to Zimbabwe. And, we went to the outside and I met um, a girl who was a student, a girl. I mean, she's a she's my age now, but a woman who was a student there at the time. And she didn't see the craft, but she was in another part of the school because, they had their lunch breaks at different sort of times. But she said, like, when it happened, it was like a huge event for the school, but it wasn't weird. No one acted like, oh my God, the aliens landed. They were like, wow, we have this incredible interaction. And it was very positive. It was completely accepted. No one was shamed. No one was derided because they saw it or they drew it or they talked about it. Everyone talked about it. The whole school talked about it. And it changed the way the school taught kids. They went from being just a normal school to teaching about, because the message the aliens brought was like, look after your planet and technology is bad and the usual stuff, as aliens do, when they, when they eventually chat to us. um and the whole school became very much about conservation, looking after the planet, like a very balanced, like a much more pro earth, pro human curriculum, right? So it had like a weird implication, but at no point was it ever treated weird, right? It wasn't like, oh, we don't talk about it. We talk about it, and it's just like normal. It was entirely accepted. So, and I mean, that's just the most incredible case, that we have. And, there's been a number of, school children sightings, right? They got the Westfall in Australia. You had one in, I think, Scotland, or Wales or something like that. That was covered in one of the documentaries I saw. And then there's another very interesting story. You can get the documentary on Amazon about a woman called Elizabeth Clara. She was South African, and she, a craft landed, a guy came out, and she had an affair with him, and she went back to his home planet. She had his kid went back with the dad. She came back to planet Earth and lived a very successful, highly accomplished life. Wrote a book.
Good looking
It's a
alien.
documentary, and it's like life goes on.
That's like it's like the most relaxing. Yeah, they're all right.
Yeah, exactly. As you do, you have an affair.
Yeah. I mean, you almost do wonder if, and we're coming up on an hour, so we'll wrap it up soon. But I was gonna say, like having grown up in the United States, I have friends from where Ireland
Yeah,
and Wales and England, and they all talk about the like alcohol is not as it is, but it's not as like crazy of a America, it's like the trope. It's like you get to college and then it's just fucking wild. And I know that from my own experiences. You just go insane because you're not allowed to have it. No one's allowed to have it. And then all of a sudden you're away from mom and dad or you're away from teachers and you're in a frat house and you're 19 and you're like, let's go crazy.
yeah,
And they're like, that doesn't really exist as much because they're introduced to it early. and it's some of them still go wild, of course, but in general, there's not this like magical thing that all you can't have. You really want it, and then all of a sudden you get it, and you guys just go crazy with it. Like that's more of an American thing, and you wonder, has all this secrecy almost made it out to be more than it is? Because we just because you don't think you just accept you go, well, it's UFOs, it's the biggest story ever. I mean, maybe on other planets, it's just kind of a thing that happens. And in the same way, I'm not blown away by the fact that there are other countries. I'm not like, oh my God, South Africa exists. I'm like, yeah, they're somewhere else in the world. They have a different history, and
Yeah,
sure, and
yeah.
this is America. And, the same way we don't freak out about that. You almost wonder if it's just like not hidden by a bunch of assholes. Does it become a little less fantastical? You go, yeah, they're from the nearby star system. But you almost wonder if they just don't freak out about it. But
Yeah.
it's like America, it's like American Pie, and we're all freshmen in college right now, and we're about to just go crazy. And it's like, well, this is what happens when you don't let anyone see the UFO.
Yeah.
People lose their minds. And, you know, I don't know,
Oh,
maybe they let Trump win again because he's the only person that they're like, if he talks about it, he's the only person that he himself would still be a bigger story than the UFO.
yeah,
But then
yeah. Well,
again,
and also half the country wouldn't believe him, or at least
half
half
the
the
country wouldn't believe him
country.
because it's him, and the other half would. Yeah, you mean in terms of disinformation, that might be you might want him for that reason, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I also think he's kind of not in that whole world, right? He's a real outsider to that, right? He wasn't a politician for 50 years
Yeah.
before he became president. He's not he's not gone through the DOD. He's not gone through that system. He's not beholden to, let's say, I'm choosing the word for what was the X-Files, the cabal, right? That hold on
Yeah.
to this information. Um, he's completely outside of that. So, he represents a good opportunity to get to the bottom of um, you know, finding, getting that out there. And at the same time, I mean, that's why I kind of feel like the more, that goes to my earlier point, right? When doing the analogy with alcohol. And in the same vein, you want people to talk about it. So it's not a shock that because I don't know if you heard Hal Puthoff talk about it. I've been to the two Soul conferences that Gary Nolan's had. I think the first one was at Stanford, and the second one was somewhere in San Francisco. And um, Hal Puthoff talked at the first one about how, in the early 2000s, they got a bunch of guys together, all these leading experts in these fields, and said to them, give a money or give a numerical value to, what would be people's reactions from a religious point of view, and from a stock market, and from a motor, an industry point of view, what would happen if we told them the truth. And basically, all these experts just decided that, the worst thing you could do was to tell people, right, that this stuff is real. Like it would upset the stock market, it would accept. And I feel like, and I can't, I don't know enough about the study, but you can see his discussion on Soul about that. But from my perspective, it's the same thing that we have with COVID, right? Some expert is saying, you little like people down there,
Hmm.
you can't handle the truth, right? It's going to be too big for your little minds.
Mm.
Us experts are going to like dole it out in like piecemeal, and if we dole it out at all, but really you people can't handle it. It's the most condescending thing I've ever come across, right? And no one in the UFO movement really has come forward and said, okay, what we want is we want to know how the spacecraft work, right? I mean, you get Jack Safati and a few other guys that, profess to know, the physics and all of that. And I mean, you could easily put that in its own and contain it. But outside of that, no one really cares about, what the Department of Defense is concerned about. If it is a case of this tech falling into the hands of the wrong people, right? What I think it is there's I think like there's a concern that opens the floodgates to other questions, right? So it's not just the ontological shock. It's the okay, so there's another way that we can move that doesn't involve oil. There's another way that we move that doesn't involve nuclear. And all these companies and organizations and people that have built all their money around energy and around aircraft, like all of it's
Control.
bullshit. It's
Well,
gone.
it's control mechanism.
And no one in those areas wants to like, people don't like change, right? They don't want to have, oh, I've got a lot of stock in, I don't know, United Airlines. I don't
I
want
can't
that
have
stock.
0 point technology come out. It'll
Yeah,
destroy
exactly.
my portfolio.
Exactly. How am I gonna? Because it would. I mean, it would
It
literally.
would, but the big picture is it would also probably create new technologies and create a new world where things like
Exactly.
portfolios weren't needed. You'd be
Exactly.
like, yeah,
And
we all have, abundance now. You don't need
yeah,
portfolios.
exactly. And how many how many like the things we fight about now would be irrelevant, right? So the fight about, God and which religion is, the best or whatever, like that just becomes irrelevant. And then, all your religious leaders just suddenly lose their standing because like you don't need you've got, I don't know, Paul the alien, right, telling you how it is on Zeta Reticuli.
Yeah.
No, if you remember the movie, and like, and and so why do I need to go to church, right? Like telling me about like, oh, I've got to be, if I'm not a good person, I'm going to go to hell or whatever. Like that changes, your entire control over people because you lose that threat, right? You lose that um ability. And I feel though that we're at a level where consciousness, people, I mean, you've discovered this, right, with the UFO subject. It very much starts morphing into spirituality,
Hmm.
consciousness, other dimensions, out of body experiences, life after death. Like it goes immediately into a whole other bunch of subjects. And and I think that yes, so it should. And we should have those discussions and we should talk about it and we should challenge everything. And, I just I don't think that like listening to a bunch of experts and, bowing down to, the cabal is the way that we should go. And that's how I felt about COVID. I mean, that's why Robert and I are friends, because I couldn't stand to see them do what they were doing to the human population, right? They just lied and they put us in prisons in our own home and they wanted to pump us full of this bioweapon, right? And I mean, it's whether it was intentional bioweapon or not, that's how it's worked out. So, I'm very much about, let's just turn it all upside down. Let's just shake it all out and see what happens. And the chips will fall where they may, and some people will, lose their portfolio. People will have to like learn to live with our alien neighbors. And
I think it's one reasoning is I think about I, the one quote or line I love the most from Bob Lazar is because it's the one that feels the most honest.
yeah.
When Rogan was like, if you could go back, would you do it all again? And he goes, absolutely not. He goes, well, one, it's just been a fucking headache. But two, he's like, I love physics. I was
Mm,
playing with the coolest toy imaginable. And
yeah.
to me, that was the most honest answer. Because most people are like, I wouldn't do anything differently. And he's like, oh, I wouldn't do it at all. It's been a huge problem. And I was playing with the coolest toy on earth. And now I don't get to play. To me, I go, oh, that's a guy just being honest and full of regret.
Yeah, yeah.
That could be a reason behind it. People are, regardless of the ethical thing, they're like, are you kidding me, dude? I'm not. This is, why would I tell anyone about this? I get to go play with it. And the other thing is I don't think Trump's read in. I also think that Trump is just such like an odd anomaly. I don't think I can just imagine like I don't think any part of him would be shocked at all if they're like, so aliens exist, so we've been hiding it from the president for 80 years. He'd be like, right, right. I don't, part of me thinks he would just be so like, he would just tweet about it. He like,
Yeah,
went into
yeah, yeah.
Area 51, crazy weapons, magical
Well,
stuff.
can I?
That's it.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I know we're sort of running close to time, but let me
sure.
just share a couple of thoughts with you. So
Yeah.
there's a guy called Michael Herrera. Have you heard him speak? He
I
was
feel
a
like
Marine that was in Indonesia that saw what looked like a UFO craft that was actually a ARV, alien reproduction vehicle, and they were herding a bunch of refugees because there was some earthquake or some catastrophe that they were fleeing into these what do you call these things? Cargo pods, right? And lifting them off. And he came across this, and for a while he thought it was human trafficking or drugs or something like that, right? Because it was actually run by guys that spoke American but weren't wearing any black camo, right? So like nondescript special forces. And but on a recent podcast, he came out and he said, no, actually, it's part of the psionic program that the government's running, where they're kidnapping people from the third world or bringing people over. Let's not, kidnapping has legal implications. Bringing people over from the third world, testing them for psionic ability, and if they have them, they're using them to lure in, alien craft and downing the craft and using that craft
Oof.
and as part of their technology reproduction. So an angle to get Trump interested and I say this because I know people who know Trump, that Trump, if above all else, is a very empathetic person. He really likes people. And if he knew that we were doing this to people, that we were removing them from their homes, I mean, yes, we're giving them jobs, right? And they're in a better place, right? And maybe it's willing, right? At the end of the day, you're still kind of holding them hostage, right? And do they really have freedom of choice, right? And it's indentured labor is indentured labor. I don't care how you call it. And um, and then we're using, them to do these things to run, be the janitors and the coffee lady and all these, deep underground military bases where we have all this stuff that we're running and we're testing, and yet we're doing it against their will, right? Or we're doing it in a way that they have no life choice. How is that a good thing for the government to do? And then you start wondering, well, okay, um, what else is the government doing? If the government's prepared to do that, and I say the government, right? What else are they doing? And how many people have they killed that, wanted to leave the program, wanted to be like, well, I don't want to do this. I want to go back to my fields in Bangladesh or, Nigeria or something because, at least I could sit in the sun and be with, do my own thing, right? And I don't. I just. I mean, the question that I have is like, how much of what this program has done has affected people, like actual human people. Aside from the alien, aside from the tech, aside from all that, how much harm have they created? And is there not an obligation on our president to stop that, right? And to at least allow, like put people above everything else. Because yes, I mean, aliens are interesting, but if people are involved in this way, we know what happened to Grush, right? He was harassed. I believe his vehicle was shot at. Like the guy went through the ringer to come out. So his personal freedom, we know that there's been people that have come out that, have died mysteriously, right? Um, there's a human element to this too. And shouldn't we care about that? And the last point I wanted to just say is, a lot of the UFO guys talk about, there should be this Truth and Reconciliation Commission, right? We should bring all these, whistleblowers, and we should say to the industry and the cabal, like, come forward, and if you tell us the truth, we won't prosecute you. And the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was done after apartheid in South Africa. And I'll tell you that, yes, a lot of stuff came out, but it did nothing good for the country. The country is in a shit state right now, excuse my language, um, because people don't forget. People don't reconcile, right? They just don't. Stuff has to get worked through the system. Resentments, injustices have to work through the system, right? So all the reconciliation in the world, all the kumbaya and standing around a bonfire and we all forgive and forget, it's kind of bullshit, right? At the end of the day, you just have to hold people accountable for their actions. And truth and justice has to be seen to be done. And I believe like that has to be the same with COVID, right? If we don't let these guys, if we let these guys get away with what they did during COVID, that's not good for the country. It's not good for our relationship with our government. There has to be, there has to be justice and it has to be seen to be done. And I feel like that's the same thing with this UFO space, right? If these guys are doing bad stuff and they've hurt people and they've taken people away from their home countries against their will, you know, there has to be a reckoning.
Yeah, I guess my optimism as well is Trump seemingly doesn't he seemingly doesn't give a fuck or isn't bullied by the military industrial complex. I mean, a broad statement in
Yeah,
terms of, first administration, the Abraham Accords in the Middle East, and now this, meeting with Russia and being like, hey, let's not keep this, meat
yeah,
grinder going. Yeah, there might be a part of him that's like just doesn't care about that. And it's something where like Kennedy wanted to go to Russia and be like, hey, why don't we work together on this? Like it seems to be that as well as I think Trump also just has like a general hatred for the current, deep state power elite.
yeah.
And it might even be where he doesn't even care about the whole UO. He'd just be like, I want it because it might be childlike where he's like, I want it because they don't want it,
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
also like right up Trump's alley.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I I'm not 100% sure it will. I would say I'm more optimistic now than I
Mhm.
am at a different time. If it's
Yeah.
gonna happen, it's gonna happen now.
Oh, I think so. And I think there's enough really good people behind it. There are good people that are pushing for it. I mean, the guys behind Soul Foundation are all about disclosure. Because they're all a bunch of nerds that just want to work on the stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
You know? They
Yeah,
just wanna.
it's it really doesn't take that many bad people to kind of completely fuck up the world. And like
No, it doesn't.
the optimistic side of that is like there's not that many of them.
Mm.
It's like it's not the the vast majority of people again, like you said, like a very small percentage of people are like, I want to know the physics of how the engine works. Most people are like, oh, I want to, are they real? It's like, can you imagine like trying to gatekeep the internet and being like, people could all be spies, they could all be, versus most people just want to get on Instagram, man. Like no one's really getting in the NSA's way. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, you don't, if you lock it down like North Korea, people are going to start to revolt purely because they hate you. If you keep it open like the US, like, you don't need to shut this stuff down. Most people aren't going to
Yeah.
they don't give a fuck. They don't want the phone to like leak state secrets. They want it to order Taco Bell.
Yeah.
It's like most people
They
are
do.
simple. So,
Yeah.
um,
Exactly. Exactly. And you'll have every influencer will just want photos with the craft and
yeah,
the.
they don't. Honestly, I think what will happen is like there's going to be disclosure and it's going to
Yeah.
be part of like the lexicon, and everyone's going to kind of be shocked at how much we just took it in stride.
Yeah.
Even now, we're like, it's going to be the biggest thing. It could very well be in 5 more years. We're just like, yeah, I know the whole UFO thing. And it's just because ultimately it's gonna be you still gotta go to work, man. You still got like shit to do.
Yeah.
You're
Exactly.
still doing Christmas, still gotta go to the birthday party. Like, yeah, and there's UFOs. I think I honestly think that's probably the most likely outcome is that like it will almost kind of be boring. It'll be crazy, but it'll be like getting a new phone. It'll be like, oh, this is awesome. And after a week, you're like, yeah, whatever. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, I think that's what it will be. That to me, that's the most realistic outcome is, yeah,
Yeah.
it's UFOs. What do yeah,
Yeah.
of course, the government still controls the best ones and, whatever. I think that's
And then
probably what
and
it'll
the thing
be.
is, like, I think everyone's a patriot in this country. Like, no one wants, like, oh, we want to share that with Russia. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
It's all the case.
Yeah.
You know, it's, I think, you could easily sell people on, okay, we're just going to share this. And people would be like, perfect, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't need to know more. I don't want Russia to know. I don't want China to know. You
And
know,
it's also like how many of those programs are sucking up so much funding that you could just get rid. I mean, just like the disinformation programs. Be like, yeah, dude, you guys can stop spending like 100 billion a year on that. Nobody gives a fuck. Like nobody cares. Like go put that
we
on
have an
something
extra
else.
100 billion to give to Zelensky, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, and then but that's all they'll view it. They'll be like, we can use this for
Uh,
something else. Like it's got to be a big headache to be, you don't have to run this thing anymore.
Exactly, exactly. And it's not like Trump really cares about like keeping all
Trump
these
doesn't give a
employees, you know what I
no, he
mean? He's
doesn't
all
give a
about just
fuck. No, but Trump might want to do it simply so it happens under his presidency.
I think he'd want the legacy.
I
Yeah.
think he because if you look back at like U.S. history, not recent, but I mean, what are names that like it's like George Washington, Abe Lincoln,
Yeah.
Obama. He's the first black president. Like aside from that, it's like even the president gets forgotten.
Yeah.
That might be like why he wants it, but yeah, he just wants to be the UFO president. So
Or maybe that's how we have to sell it to him, you know?
yeah, I think listen, work with the army you have. I think that's how you have to be. Yeah, fuck everything else. Your name, UFO Brett. I'll do it. Like that's a lot. Like path of least resistance. Um, but yeah,
Uh,
for now, let's wrap this thing up. Justine, it was awesome. Thank you for coming on. And,
yeah. And there's the hearings on the 9th of September.
yeah, text those to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then let's see what comes out of that. If there's anything interesting, happy to sit down and chat again.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll wrap this up. Don't go anywhere. Hold on. Let me stop recording and